Hey, it's another episode of UP Power with Keegan Cooper and myself. We're excited to be back, talk some more football, and we had football Monday night. The Detroit Lions at home, Ford Field. Dan Campbell finally beats the Seahawks. That had been Infinity Stone that he had been wanting to check off for a while. Seattle came in there week 2 last year, got a win in a shootout, kind of like this game. 42-29, the Lions win it. Big storyline is Jared Goff was perfect, 18 for 18. He threw a perfect game.
Perfect game in football. You love it.
But he was really on it, and they didn't ask him to do too much because Ben Johnson was cooking. You saw that on that goal line play. Amon-Ra St. Brown, passing touchdown to Jared Goff. Jared Goff turned on the wheels, and I guess Amon-Ra is their third-string emergency quarterback. I feel pretty good about that if they ever got in a situation which would be pretty bad that Goff went down, Hooker went down. But just in case, break glass in case of emergency, Amon-Ra St. Brown. That play was awesome.
Yeah, it was, and it was electric there at Ford Field. And I think the Lions put together that complete game. I mean, Jared Goff, of course, being perfect, 18 for 18, but also defensively, yes, they allowed 29 points. But they beat the Seahawks, the 3-0 Seahawks, too. Yeah. So kind of maybe put out the fire for the Seahawks. And, they're not 4-0 now going into week 5. It was just, it was kind of a beautiful – it was back and forth for a while, though. It was.
Well, I think Seattle definitely proved themselves in the second half because they could have bowed out down 21-7 at halftime. They have playmakers on the offensive side of the ball, too. I mean, if you want to get nitpicky about the Lions' win, it was a really good win, but the defense allowing those explosive plays, and then they get saved by the offensive pass interference on that 1 4th down. Maybe they're not entirely thrilled with the way they played in the second half, but give Seattle credit. Kenneth Walker, Michigan State fans know well, he's awesome. Really was in the mix for the Heisman 3 years ago, and Charbonnet as well. They tried a little hook and ladder. It worked on a 3rd down and 10+. I believe it was their first conversion of that sort all season. And DK Metcalf, also one of the best receivers in the league. So it was a shootout between two really good teams. I would love to potentially see this matchup in the playoffs.
Yeah, it would be good now that both teams have seen each other and seen kind of the scheme of what they do. Now that's going to change come playoffs, right? They're going to add things and change things. But it was really great. And I take it back to, I think a key play in this game, a really big turning point, was that 2-point conversion that they go for, and Seattle doesn't get it to cut it to, really what you would consider a one-possession game. And then, of course, Jared Goff comes out and throws, just some bombs last night. 70 yards, 40 yards here. I think he had another 50-yard throw.
His perfect night, 18 for 18, is not all because of him. It's because of those receivers, too. Amon-Ra with the body control in the end zone, getting his toes in on that one. That would have been an incompletion. J-Mo ripping off that 70-yarder, as you mentioned. A lot of that was Williams and not Goff, but he was exceptional when you look at the total body of work. Just really good, no picks. He had thrown some interceptions in the first couple of weeks that were a little uncharacteristic, but Jared Goff in this offense totally in rhythm now 4 weeks into the season. You're the Lions. Obviously, you're chasing the Vikings, but you got to feel really good about where you're at. Heading into the bye week, they have an early bye. So they get healthy, maybe get Frank Ragnow back sooner rather than later, but it didn't seem like there were many issues with the offensive line not having their anchor there, multiple-time Pro Bowler in Ragnow. So that's another encouraging sign now that they go into the bye week 3-1 with a win, come out of it a little bit more healthy and really hit the ground running. They're in a good spot.
They are, and I look ahead to their schedule, and I just pulled it up here, but you're on the road, coming out of the bye week, just double-checking, at Dallas, so you've got the Cowboys.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one.
Even though the Cowboys haven't been very impressive through 3 weeks.
It's a tough place to go play.
Yeah.
And then you're on the road again, and I think a true test for the Lions will be when they match up with the Vikings coming on
October 20th. Yeah,
because the Vikings are cooking.
Yeah, let's get there. Vikings Packers Sunday afternoon. Jordan Love comes back, doesn't look like himself in the first half for sure. Threw the 2 interceptions. Maybe not entirely on him, but he threw the 2 interceptions. Yeah. Wasn't moving as good as you'd want him to be, but understandably coming off that knee injury, he wasn't all that mobile. Not that that's his game in the first place, but Packers dug themselves too deep of a hole. And just kind of like what I said about Seattle, Minnesota, 4 weeks, that's not a fluke. 2 weeks, it could be a fluke. But no, the Vikings are in the mix for this division. Obviously, they're on top right now, and they got the better of the Packers on Sunday.
Yeah, and it's a question for me. You want Jordan Love in that game because it's a divisional opponent, and you really need to win that game. I think it puts the Packers in a little bit of a precarious position now. Yeah. But do you also say, hey, we've won the last 2 weeks with Malik at quarterback. Do we just throw him in there and get Jordan Love 100%?
How strange is that, though? Malik Willis 2-0, Jordan Love 0-2. I think it's largely circumstantial based on the teams they played in those games. But at the same time, the fourth quarter, all the fans at Lambeau had at least reason to have hope that they'll be totally fine. And come next week, Jordan Love really has his legs under him again. He threw the ball 54 times, though. Yeah. Obviously, you did not want to do that. You would have hoped to run the ball a little bit better. But that's just what happens when the Vikings rip off 4 touchdowns. Defense without Jair Alexander, that hurt. And Minnesota has playmakers. Obviously they have the best receiver in the league, in JJ. Is that going to get confusing with JJ McCarthy and JJ Justin Jefferson?
Maybe. Could be.
I don't know. But Sam Darnold's their quarterback right now, and he it's 4 weeks. It's tough, but he's playing at an MVP level. You can't put it any other way. Yeah. So I don't think there should be a panic. I mean, in the end, they only lose by 2. True. 31-29. That onside kick, Matt LaFleur was asked about it yesterday. He said he didn't have any regrets. They had tried that in practice with the drop punt type beat on the onside. The percentage clip that you get onside recoveries at, obviously very low. So I didn't have a problem with trying that. If it worked in practice, try it in the game. Yeah. Obviously, it didn't work for him, and Minnesota was able to close it out. But Packers at 2-2. The NFC North is the best division in football. I think they're tied with the Bears now. The Bears got a nice win at home over the Rams. I think if your team's tied for last in the division through, I know it's not a quarter of the season anymore, I'll still refer to it. We get the bonus 17th game, but through a quarter of the season, essentially, the teams in the basement are 500. You have a pretty good division. Yeah, you do. And I looking at it, I think everybody's obviously chasing Minnesota. I think really the Lions are chasing Minnesota. Green Bay is chasing the Lions. And the Bears are chasing everybody. And the Bears are chasing everybody. Yeah. And I think that is, when you look at the other divisions, AFC West is pretty good right now. Kansas City 4-0, and then everybody else, 500. But this is the division that is going to be, I think, really anybody's to take. And it's going to come down to those divisional games. So my big question is, Jordan Love returns, wasn't 100%. I think we can all agree on that. Is he going to be 100% next week, or are we going to see him have to kind of nurse this injury but continue to play, so never really be 100%? Right, that's the tricky part, and I can't remember. Their bye doesn't come in until, I don't know what week it is, but Sunday, November 10th. So that's later in the season. They don't get the benefit of having it right now when they could probably use it, like the Lions. But, yeah, it's going to be a road back, I think, for Jordan Love, getting back to the level, obviously, he wants to be playing at. They go on the road next week to SoFi Stadium, take on the Rams. It's weird, the Bears and the Packers are basically playing the same teams currently as they go through their schedule. Of course, they don't meet until November either. that's the other thing about the Packers. They don't have a division game until the Lions on November the 3rd. So you have some time, NFC teams on their schedule that they want to beat, and the Rams, the Cardinals, and then their third and fourth AFC South games of the year against the Texans and the Jaguars. So there's some time to get kind of geared back up for the divisional games that will be crucial, absolutely crucial, come November and December. The Rams really, really banged up, obviously without their two best wide receivers, who are two of the best wide receivers in the league. Cooper Kupp was the Triple Crown a couple years ago when they were in the Super Bowl. Before he got hurt, he was looking really good. And obviously Puka Nacua is coming off one of the best rookie seasons for a wide receiver in a long time. That hurts. I did watch that whole Bears game between Bears and Rams on Sunday. The Rams offense, not quite the same. They can still run the ball with Kyren Williams, and they mix it up back there. Remarkably, just as it was when Brad Holmes was there in their front office, when Sean McVay was the head coach, that they just get these guys out of nowhere to contribute. Rams not playing good, partially due to the injuries, but going on the road and playing Sean McVay, not easy. Matt LaFleur knows that, and obviously they used to coach together, part of that Shanahan coaching tree. But Packers, regroup for that game. I think they'll be all right. Like I said, the way they played in the second half, specifically the fourth quarter, shows you that they'll be okay. And LaFleur also said it yesterday. Love got better over the course of the game. Yeah. Which is what you were hoping for, right?
Yeah, and I think it was too. It's his first game back out of, after having that injury. There's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way. I think that they'll be fine in Week 5. Only 2 NFL teams still undefeated. Kevin, who do you think is going to be the last? Chiefs and Vikings.
That is crazy through 4 weeks. They're the only 2.
Yeah.
Actually, check out the Vikings schedule now.
Yeah.
Obviously, you'd say the Chiefs, but when do the Vikings get handed their first loss is the good question. They're home next 2 weeks. As you mentioned, that Lions game in 2 weeks. The Jets go to Minnesota this week. Sam Darnold revenge game.
Yeah.
I think he's played the Jets before since leaving them. But another one now that he's MVP, Sam Darnold. And then the Lions game, that's huge for the Lions.
Yeah.
I think we said that a few minutes ago. So if I had to guess, maybe that's their first loss.
Yeah.
Vikings moved to 5-0 and then follow the Lions. I'm sure Detroit fans would be happy about that if that's the case. Chiefs schedule, what do they have?
Saints coming up on the 7th. 49ers.
They will find a way to win that game.
Against the Saints?
Oh, we get a Super Bowl rematch.
Yeah, 49ers Chiefs on the 20th, which could be.
That's fun.
And the
in San Francisco.
And the 49ers defense is cooking. Brock Purdy looks pretty good.
Wow,
the 49ers defense, I think, has the opportunity to eat Patrick Mahomes.
I agree, and with this Christian McCaffrey situation, which does not sound good.
No.
Obviously, he's on injured reserve. Went to Germany to see a doctor for tendonitis with his Achilles, which I guess it's been reported that he's dealing with it in both legs.
Not good.
Not good for them. So, but you're right. That defense really, really good. Fred Warner is one of my favorite players in the league.
And the Chiefs too banged up. Not a lot of their guys. I mean,
but they'll just keep finding ways to win.
Finding ways to win. Yeah.
No official news on Rashee Rice, but it was Mahomes that injured him. Yeah. They feared a torn ACL or something else torn in his knee, but that'll hurt. They'll really have to get Travis Kelce involved.
Yeah, he'll have to be big, and he has not been big through their first 4 weeks.
No, he's been very quiet. People calling him washed and everything. So we'll see if that's the case, or if he really has to step up when they're dealing with these injuries to their offense. Isaiah Pacheco.
Huge
also
loss.
On IR was awesome for them in the run game a year ago when, of course, they won the Super Bowl like they do every year. We'll touch on the Tigers. They're, as we're recording this, about to get started with the Astros. So you'll know the outcome of Game 1 of the Wild Card series more than likely when you're listening to this. Skubal on the mound, Framber Valdez for the Astros. I think it's a good matchup for the Tigers. It's just all the playoff experience in the other dugout. It does make me a little iffy, but you have the best pitcher in the American League going for you in Game 1. And depending on how far the Tigers are able to move through the playoffs, he'll be a horse in the playoffs. He'll be one of those guys. Just listening to him Friday night, of course, when they clinched, big night for Detroit sports, first time in 10 years.
Yeah.
Scuba was just so beyond happy listening to him do interviews and everything. And he and the rest of this team, they want more. So all I'm saying is Scuba's up for the task, it seems like, when it comes to, being a go-to guy and pitching on short rest in the postseason. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, the storyline is A.J. Hinch going up against the team where he won a World Series and left there in not so good circumstances with the sign-stealing scandal. So that's an interesting one. Tigers, I still think they're the hottest team in baseball, even though they lost the 2 to the White Sox when they're hungover on Saturday and then Sunday's game, which didn't really matter. I wasn't too discouraged by those games because what were they playing for?
Yeah.
Would you rather play Houston or Baltimore? You could go either way.
Pretty
you
much.
Could convince
You
me
could go
for either one, right?
You could go either way. Mets Brewers tonight as well. I think that the Brewers handle business.
I agree. Now, the rest versus rust argument, does that even start in the wild card round? Of course, we think about that in the divisional round when you have teams with byes. In the National League, it's the Phillies and the Dodgers with byes. On the American side, the Guardians and the Yankees. So they're not playing until this weekend when the divisional series start. The Mets in action yesterday for a doubleheader. They didn't clinch until yesterday, Monday afternoon. Got to fly from Atlanta to Milwaukee. They weren't even home yesterday. They were on the road yesterday. Obviously, they do this over the course of the season, but it's
October.
A little different in October, like you just said. So I do like where the Brewers are at with this series. We'll just have to see how it plays out. 3-game series. Win Game 1, it's huge.
Huge, yeah, huge too. I also think for both the Tigers and the Brewers, getting your starter deep, throw him as much as you can.
Absolutely.
Save that bullpen, because if it goes to a Game 3, you're going to want to be able to lean on that bullpen and have them come in and throw some major innings.
Yeah, I personally hate the 3-game series. I think all the playoff series, even, you expanded the playoffs, great. Play a 7-game series.
Do it.
Just because Brewers won 93 games, I would just hate to see them be out in 2 because they dropped 2.
Yeah.
And be out of it. But Freddie Peralta on the mound for Milwaukee, Luis Severino for the Mets. He's pitched in the playoffs before. Freddie Peralta's been pretty dang good of late. I kind of think the Brewers would win this one with their bats. This game and the series. So the Mets riding high after clinching just Monday, starting the playoffs Tuesday. We'll see how it plays out, but playoff baseball is here. It's exciting. Calendar reads October, so perfect timing.
Wild.
Let's go to high school football here in the UP, and we'll get to college when we close out. Not a whole lot of change in the UP poll this week. Just taking you through it. Menominee 5-0. They've been terrific. They were terrific again on Friday. Kingsford 5-0. Not really the case. We'll get to the Flivers and what they did on Friday. A little shaky, but they're still undefeated. Marquette at 3-4-1. Just that loss to Lowell. Negaunee 4-1. Only the loss to Kingsford. And then Iron Mountain undefeated at 5-0. Still looking really good. I like the Mountaineers. Haven't exactly been tested. Probably why they're 5th in 11-man right now. But let's start with Menominee. That game was over really quick. It was obviously our game of the week. Houghton, not a joke of a team. They were 500. Again, their only losses were to Kingsford and Iron Mountain. So, going in, you think Houghton has a chance for sure. Obviously, Menominee would be the favorite in that game. They were. But the Maroons do so much that teams can't match up with.
Yeah, and I think
it starts with Tanner Turcoff.
It does, and I think, people talk about his brother, Trevor, but the differences between those guys. I think Tanner, the length that he has.
Yeah, they're not the same player, which is really the interesting part because you mentioned his height. His size, he can bulldoze through people if he has to.
And I think that goes to show, just how, he's able to see the field, and I think see plays develop maybe a little bit faster than his brother. Also, when he takes the direct snap and hikes outside from the 31 and runs it to the end zone, you can't be upset about that.
You look at the Menominee line, you're like, oh, well, they might be fundamentally sound, but they're not overwhelming when you think about size. But they're very fundamentally sound.
Yeah.
And they do everything right. And talking to some of those guys last week, ahead of that Houghton game, they're on a mission. I said it Friday night. We said it week 1, the M&M game.
Yeah.
They left last season with a really bad taste in their mouths.
Yeah.
As a group. Just the way that state championship game went, and they think, and they have every reason to think, that they have enough talent to get right back there and actually win it this year. You're just seeing that play out through 5 weeks.
Yeah, you are. I mean, I was there in Menominee for week 1, and the picture of them at Ford Field that says, never forget and redemption, I think is the overarching theme of the Menominee Maroons in 2024. And you've seen it through the first 5 weeks, 5-0, and most of the teams that they played, it hasn't been close.
No. So we'll have some interesting games coming up when the Maroons take on Kingsford and Negaunee teams in the top 5. But yeah, for now they're rolling. I think both of us obviously have a lot of respect for their coaching staff and everything they do. Chad Brandt really dials it up and expects a lot out of those guys, and in return he gets a lot from them. Let's go to Kingsford. A game this weekend that I wasn't really expecting to be so close. 0-0 at halftime between Kingsford and Calumet. Flivers win at 14-0. At the end of the day, they got the job done, but it didn't look as clean as a lot of their wins so far this year.
Yeah, I think maybe an off night for Kingsford. Again, they win, so they're still 5-0, but I think travel up there to Calumet,
sure.
That's tough.
Yeah.
And the Calumet, defense at the same time work hard. I spent an afternoon at one of their practices this year, and they're no slouch. So to hold Kingsford to only 14 points, hold them scoreless for a half, I think goes to show just the level that we're seeing in a lot of these 11-player teams outside of the top 5 here that we have on the poll. That they're right there, right? They're just.
I think so. Especially Calumet, like you said, defensively. It wasn't explosive plays that led to the 2 touchdowns. They were punching those in. Kingsford had to work for it. Nick Navarro, I believe, threw another interception. He threw a pick against Negaunee, which was returned and let the Miners back in that game. So you obviously want to see him as a senior quarterback limit those mistakes going forward.
Yeah.
I think, a lot like the Packers, the Flivers will be fine.
Yeah.
But just not their cleanest performance on Friday night when you think about it. And I do believe they'll get back to some of those explosive plays because they have guys like Gavin Grondin and Jack Kriegel and Gavin Trevelyan who can run through people if he has to. So that wasn't necessarily the case on Friday, but I think we'll see more of that from Kingsford. Now, Marquette has another UP team on the schedule this week. They played the Sioux in the Sioux last week, took care of business.
Yeah.
4-1. Sentinels coming home, but Eski, frisky team, I think, coming into Marquette this weekend. I'm looking forward to that one. Does Escanaba have a chance to take down Marquette?
I think they do, and I think for Marquette, I think when they took that loss to Lowell, I think it was a gut check for the Sentinels.
It had to be because that was the only points they had allowed. And they allowed 60-some, right?
Yeah. So and then again, they take on Sault Ste. Marie, and it's 49-0, and I think that got them back on track. Escanaba, like you said, I agree, a frisky team. They have the ability to come in and make some plays. Marquette, from the first whistle, you got to take care of business.
Yeah.
And he can't let up. It's it's I think an overarching message. We hear it from a lot of coaches and a lot of players, putting together a full game for 4 quarters every snap. Because if you take one off, Escanaba has the ability to kind of strike back, and they'll put some points on the board and make it, interesting, if that makes sense.
Oh, for sure. Briefly, Nagani took down Hancock pretty easily. It was 28-0 in seemingly a blur. So the Miners, coming off that Kingsford loss, really pretty much got back on track. And then just 1 week before Menominee and Nagani meet, which will be a great matchup in Nagani. So the Maroons will definitely be tested there.
Yeah.
The Maroons have Gladstone this week. We've talked about Gladstone being down. They fall to Westwood on Friday. So you'd like to think that's another win for the Maroons. They'd be 6-0 going into the Nagani game. And for the Miners, they got back to what they do best in that Hancock game. And, they take on Westwood. Not a lot of travel there this Friday. So, we'll see how the Miners perform as they kind of gear up for the tail end of their schedule, which is tough. 2 out of 3 weeks, you're playing another top 5 team. The season finale on the 24th of October is Iron Mountain, so that's a big one for the Miners, obviously. So a lot of these teams that we're talking about in the top 5 kind of building up to what will be bigger matchups down the road. That applies to Iron Mountain. Because, Gwynn, Bark River, again, for the second time, they already beat Bark River 42-6 earlier in this season. Then Manistee, another team they already beat by almost 40 points. So going down the line, looks pretty easy for Iron Mountain. But again, that finale against Nagani will be a big one.
Yeah.
They took down Nagani in the finale of the regular season a year ago to finish perfect in the regular season. I think that'll be the case again this season, where whether or not the Mountaineers have an undefeated season comes down to that Nagani game.
Yeah, I think so too. And you work every week to get up to these games, and by the time you get to your season finale, everybody knows everybody about everything.
Yep.
Right? You might add 1 or 2 things throughout that week, but they know what you're going to do. They know your playmakers, who's going to be out there and make plays. So it's really at the end of the night who goes out there and who makes the plays to win the game.
Yeah, we'll see. Like we mentioned, we have some exciting matchups coming up in 11-man. Now we have a really exciting one for our game of the week in 8-man this week. Munising, undefeated, ranked 3rd in the 8-player poll, hosting Norway, who only has that 1 loss, to Forest Park. We're getting ready to preview that game. This week should be a fun one. Obviously, we'll have it on Friday Night Fever. What are your keys to that one?
I think it comes down to your upperclassmen. When I think about Munising, I think about Carson Knitz, I think about Trevor Nolan, I think about Jack Dussault. Those guys have been playing together for a long time. All of them have been part of a state championship team back when the Mustangs won the basketball state championship.
Yeah.
So, talking with head coach Matt Matson, those guys have been in big moments. They've experienced that. So now it's, and I think it goes to the same. They all play, a bunch of different sports. So when you're on the football field, they've been in those big moments. They've experienced that maybe in a different sport, but still here. This is a big one, right? You're playing another top 5 team.
Yeah.
Norway's coming in. We talked about the Bai brothers. That's going to be a huge key for them, and I think the production from Norway, what do they get out of Cole and Owen, is going to tell a lot about,
Well, they have some
what
great
happens.
Experience too, and like you mentioned with Munising having, big-time state championship experience, same deal with a lot of these Norway Knights on the baseball team in the spring.
Yeah.
So obviously a different sport, but I think the Knights, obviously that game at Forest Park didn't go how they wanted it to go. They were really banged up. I think now they're a little bit healthier, getting ready to play this Munising team, which they scrimmaged in the preseason. Both sides definitely have a lot of respect for each other, and what they've been able to do through 5 weeks this year. It's going to be a really good matchup, and maybe the team, in my opinion, that limits those explosive plays. You don't let Trevor Nolan run off for a 70-yard touchdown, or you don't let one of the Bai brothers run off for an 80-yard touchdown. You limit that, you limit turnovers, I think you're going to be in good shape when it comes to this one because these are two really good teams.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about their offenses specifically, and don't quote me, I did the math yesterday, so let's see if I can remember. Munising through 5 weeks, 186 points. You can probably push them over 200 because they had a forfeit win, 2-0.
Yeah, right.
So they would have probably scored over 200 points already this season. Norway, through 5 weeks, 246 points.
Yeah.
So both potent offenses, but I agree with you 100%. Who limits that one big play that now sparks the offense, and now their defense gets a three and out, and they immediately go down and score again? Who can limit that? So I feel like it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I also feel like at the end of the day, who limits that one play that just starts the snowball effect, and they just score 40, 50 points?
Totally agree. It'll be fun. Munising, one of the 3 5-0 teams in 8-man. Pickford ranked second in the poll. They're undefeated at 5-0. And then Forest Park jumps back over the Panthers this week. Trojans coming off a big win over Lakeland and Hubble. I liked everything they did on Friday. Looking at some of the highlights, Grayson Sundell, we know he's a dog.
The Giuliani brothers.
Dogs. Younger bro throwing to older bro. That one play we had on Friday, there was no one within 30 yards of Kevin Giuliani when he ran in the end zone.
Yeah, he was
on that one play, just over the top, just drop it to him. Forest Park, really, really good. Really think they're in position to make some noise come the postseason. And then look who's sitting there at number 5. Behind Norway, the 2 teams in the poll with 1 loss is Norway and North Central.
Yeah, and I think North Central gets back on track. You can never count them out. The Jets are here to stay. I think they're always going to be a top 5 team conversation. So I think what I love about this 8-player poll is any one of these teams could emerge as the top. And again, when we kind of look at their schedules later on in the year, Munising Norway, this is a big game this week, right? Two top 5 teams.
Yep.
Whoever wins this one arguably goes above. If Norway wins, I think maybe they jump to 3, Munising down to 4. If Munising wins, maybe they've got a conversation piece to be in 2, or maybe a conversation to be right there edging on being number 1.
Yeah, I agree. And so Forest Park and North Central will play each other in the finale. October 25th. That should be fun. And looking at their schedules here, North Central has Lake Linden kind of down this season. Tough team for sure, but Forest Park had their way with them. Ontonagon, Gogebic, and then the Forest Park game. So a little bit similar, actually, for both of these teams, Forest Park and North Central, trying to build up to that regular season finale, because for Forest Park, they have Gogebic, Ironwood, Ontonagon, teams that they should beat. And then you have the North Central game, which I know for sure Forest Park has been circling that one. Obviously, you got to play the games in front of you, but they want to win that one and go undefeated in the regular season. That's definitely on the table for the Trojans.
No, it is, and the things that they've been able to do, Grayson Sundell on the ground and the routes he's able to run, Kevin Giuliani has been just phenomenal. I think it is a great word for it. So it'll be exciting to see how it shakes out. You got to play
and
the games.
Giuliani, the older one, Kevin, he's one of those guys like Turcoff that I think he has the size that not a lot of teams can match up with when he's catching passes, and he's built.
Yeah.
So he can push people around a little bit. Certainly a weapon for them.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see how it shakes out here. Play the games in front of you, but all the build-up to these season finales that are really going to, I think, showcase, okay, this is going to be a team in the playoffs that makes a deep run.
Yeah. Let's wrap up with college sports. We'll stay with football. Both teams, NMU and Tech, were on a bye this past week before opening up the GLIAC this Saturday. NMU against Saginaw Valley State. Tech will take on Wayne State at home. I'll start talking to Shane Richardson today. Definitely good time for the bye. It's always a good time for the bye in Marquette because obviously the Wildcats are 0-4. They've done some things so much better than last season.
Yeah.
You can tell they're an actual team, for lack of a better term. You didn't see a ton of evidence of that last year.
No.
So they're a team putting things together. Obviously difficult when you have a one-loss Saginaw Valley State team coming in to open the conference season. You don't like Northern's chances in that one, but at the same time, it's building towards that game you got to win against Roosevelt. So what I'm curious to see, and some of the things I talked about with Shane Richardson today, is can their secondary step up and get off the field really on defense, because they played their worst defensive game against Alma. Now they played pretty well offensively. Were really able to run the ball, which we know was one of the goals for that offense. That I'm interested to see. Does that defensive back group step up? The linebackers, everything, just get off the field on third down.
Yeah, on your
first of all, get to third down and then get off the field.
Yeah, on your 3rd and 3s and your 3rd and long, 3rd and 7, you've got to make a play and get the ball back.
And in that Alma game, it was only one big explosive that ran off for a touchdown. It was 70-yard for Alma. But at the same time, you don't want to be giving up 44 points to them. So tough matchup for NMU this weekend. We don't really know what the quarterback situation is going to look like either, because the other thing that came out of that Alma game was, Austin Riddle got in there, transferred from Tech, Marquette, senior high school grad, and they're running options and doing things a little bit different on offense, especially in the second half, and it worked pretty well. So the way Richardson put it today is there's a competition mid-season, which is obviously not ideal, but you're 0-4. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
I think we'll see both of them on Saturday, talking about Riddle and Horde, and it might be pretty similar to the Alma game where Horde's expected to throw the ball, and Riddle might be doing some more of those options with the NMU backs who've been really good. Nico Lukarainen, the Nagani kid, and then Elizan Rouse, the Kingsford kid, was quiet. I believe only had one carry in the Alma game, but the week before was when he ripped off 130 yards and looked really good. So NMU's run game looks pretty good. Throwing the ball with Aiden Horde hasn't been smooth. Do they have Austin Riddle or Horde back there for more snaps? That's a big question going into this game. I don't know how you feel about that situation. And Richardson calling it a competition.
No, I agree. And it's, if the Northern Michigan identity for football is going to be to establish the run, which I think we can say has been their thing that they want to do, I think that Riddle has the advantage in there with his ability to be mobile.
Yeah.
Now, Aiden Horde, if we're gonna throw the ball, then I think Horde probably has the advantage, but it's not. You don't want to see a competition mid-season, but again, like you said, you have nothing to lose. You're 0-4, and now you're entering conference play where these teams are going to be bigger, faster, and stronger. And the thing for me too, we're talking about the secondary defensively, is they're going to have to limit points, right? I think that's something that they have done in these first 4 weeks, is limit scoring for the other team. But you got to keep it close.
It's complementary football, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You got to keep it close.
Defense got to help out the offense. In that Alma game, offense played a lot better. They were able to expose some things, but defense didn't really help them out, and they weren't able to get all the way back in that game. I think we talked about this last week. This is my last point on the offense and the question marks going on right now. You did put everything on tape with Austin Riddle and what you did with him against Alma at home. So there's that maybe the Saginaw team is getting ready for you, and they know if Aiden Horde's out there, he's going to throw the ball, and it's been a little rocky for him. We also mentioned the other outcome of this is Horde's confidence kind of falter, not being trusted to be out there 100% of the time. So we'll be keeping an eye on that on Saturday. For Tech, coming into the conference play with one loss, just that overtime loss to Bemidji, they got to be feeling pretty good bye week to get healthy. They're not entirely healthy. They're never going to be. But for the Huskies, it's a big one at home against Wayne State this week. what did Dan Metlack have to say today, and how does he feel about this one?
Yeah, I think I'll start with, a team that they should have beat last year. They lose 23-21, so I think that
we've
heightens
talked
it a
about
little
this
bit.
on this podcast.
Yeah, we have,
Yeah.
and for sure. And, and we talked today, the 1974 team is going to be there. It's homecoming. All these things are heightened. But Dan today said the concentration for the football team is winning that game, right? That's the concentration. Everything else on the outside is for the fans and the community. And, yes, they'll be a part of it. They're going to have the opportunity to get with that 1974 team and talk and experience, hear their stories about what it was like. But Wayne State's coming to town, coming to Husky House, and they've got to take care of business at Curley Stadium on Saturday.
I think defending home field is so huge for this team. They don't go on the road until October 19th when they go to Ferris. That'll be a tough one, but looking down the schedule, you have Grand Valley coming up to Houghton November 9th. It's going to be cold.
Yeah. That's a big opportunity.
Yeah, defend home field. Obviously, Grand Valley's cream of the crop in D2, but who says when you get to that game and maybe you build up a little bit of confidence with the games against their home games before then, being against Wayne State, Davenport, and we'll preview that game next week based on what we see against the Warriors this weekend. Then NMU, a game they definitely should win in the Miners Cup in Houghton. So how are you building up? Your veteran team, they have a lot of veterans when you think about the offense, Darius Willis and Freeze and Champney. Those guys have all been there, been through it.
Yeah.
So I think putting the pieces together to defend home turf, you got to feel good. I think this is a talented team. So curious to see what they look like on Saturday. Conference plays a different animal. So I think this could be a really good conference season, or, they stumble, it'll be about, washing that and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and I think for the Huskies, the offense is there. And I know they've had some injuries on the defensive side of the ball.
I totally agree.
But so it's who steps up. And they've had guys step up. We think about, their last game, not the bye week, but before that. Offense was there. They only allow 7 points. Defense was there too. Like you said, complementary football. Alex Freeze is going to be your guy, and he's stepped up in big moments already this season and been the guy. You're going to have that. He's got to stay concentrated on the task at hand and the goal, but you're going to have that. Defensively, what are you going to do, right? Can you come away with 1 or 2 takeaways, maybe an interception, maybe a fumble recovery? Can you come away in those moments defensively with a big play that's going to turn it in the Huskies' favor?
Yeah, that's another thing we talked about last week. Mark Sipple being out for the year on defense. Yeah. Obviously, he's the communicator out there. So a little bit of a learning curve there. Metlack says he's happy with how the defense has adjusted without that leader out there, vocal leader, and a leader in so many ways. That Mark Sipple is a great player. For him, I think about Hunter Beekle and the games that he's played since Sipple's been out. Been really good, and Tech now, coming off the bye, you get to start hot.
Yeah,
starts with
hot.
Wayne State on Saturday. Let's flip over to volleyball real quick.
Splits.
Same results for NMU and Tech this past weekend, their second weekend of GLIAC play. Both beat Davenport, both lost to Ferris State. Now ranked 5th in Division II. They got that big time hitter.
Delape. She's so good.
She
was,
good.
And what I will say
watching
is,
that one from Tech on Friday specifically, she was on it.
When you look at when you look at the set scores for both Michigan Tech and Northern Michigan picks up that first set at home against Ferris, which I think points and bodes well for the Wildcats. These sets were close.
Yeah.
Right. They weren't blowout volleyball. Right. It wasn't 25, 6 or whatever, or 25-3. Right. They were close sets. I know the second set Ferris kind of battled back against the Wildcats and got a relatively big win in that set. I think it was 25-10 or 11. I can't remember. But I think what happened this weekend for both Wildcats and the Huskies is what should have happened at this point in the season.
Totally agree.
When you're playing a top 10 team, now you can say top 5 team in the nation, you can watch film, but you never really know until you get out there and play it. I think down the line, when they see each other again, it could be you could tell a different story, right? We think about Northern Michigan and when they beat St. Cloud State, another top-ranked team, and their hitters had, I can't remember how many kills they had, but they still beat them, right? So you're going to face teams that are going to have a hitter like Delape who gets 30 kills.
I just looked it up, and talking to Mike Lozier about it, one of my questions was, what was the difference between the Davenport match where they dominated through 2 sets? They should have won in three. They dropped the third. He admitted that today. And then Ferris, what did they do that really hurt you guys? And he was like, Delape.
Yeah, I mean,
22 kills against Northern, 18 against Tech.
Yeah, so there you go.
And she's been, I believe, the offensive player of the week in the conference every week.
Yeah, and so it's finding a way. You're probably not going to be when you have a player like that.
Sometimes it's just personnel.
Yeah, when you have a player like that, you're not going to be able to limit her. So it's how do you find a way to beat them when she gets 20-something kills?
Yeah.
I think there were, in both of those games against Ferris, service errors, tips, things like that they'll touch up on throughout the season. And then both Northern and Michigan Tech responded well. You go back out, you beat Davenport.
For sure.
You do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that was one of the things Mike Lozier mentioned. Like, there wasn't a ton to be upset about in the Ferris match. We just aren't quite equipped to beat a team like that right now.
Yeah.
And he said, if we played against Ferris like we played against Davenport, they'd definitely have a chance.
Yeah.
They just weren't quite as clean when they needed to be. Room for error was little against Ferris State for both of these teams. Briefly, we'll touch on soccer before we got to get out of here. NMU on the road this weekend, the women's team, 6-0 against Roosevelt, and then they draw with Purdue Northwest on Sunday. And John Sandoval, I know, just wants to put a 2-0 weekend together.
Yeah.
And he said, some of these letdowns in game 2 of the weekend, he put it on the coaching staff. They haven't gone through a ton of that. They didn't really go through it last year. So obviously, he said they'll take the 4 points, the win and the draw. But, got to have the same mojo for both games in the weekend because they all matter.
And I think, too, it's everybody wants to beat you. You are the team to beat.
Right.
So everybody that plays you for 90 minutes, whether it's the first game of the weekend or the second game of the weekend, they're playing you for 90 minutes. Purdue Northwest, second in the conference right now.
I believe they're undefeated.
Undefeated in the conference.
And the way Sandoval described them was the way the Wildcats were a couple of years ago when they're scrappy.
Yeah.
Haven't had a lot of success in the conference versus now NMU's got the target on their back. But this Purdue team, obviously, taking down Tech on Friday, they really proved that they're legit. And then Tech goes against Roosevelt. What a blessing Roosevelt has been to the GLIAC and its teams that have been here before, because another 6-0 win for the Huskies on Sunday. Obviously, Roosevelt women's soccer not so good, but you'll take 6-0 wins.
Yeah, you'll take 3 points. And I think the key, talking with Melissa Kuhar today, is the second half for the Huskies. That's 2 games now where they've led or been in it and then given up goals in the second half, and then they don't get the result that they want. So for them, it's that second half. Again, a thing that we talk about a lot in soccer, putting together a full 90 minutes.
Yep. Saginaw and Ferris come to the UP this weekend to take on those 2 teams. NMU men's soccer, big win, 3-1 over Purdue Northwest, which was receiving votes in the D2 poll. They followed that up, got a red card on Sunday against Parkside, ranked 21st in D2. They dropped that one 1-0, but big win on Friday for the Wildcats. See if they can build off of that. They have a midweek game against St. Cloud State, who they took on just about 10 days ago, lost to them on the road. So that'll be a big one for the Cats this week. See if they can come out on top and feel good as they move through GLIACs. But talk about a team that's really taken a step up. I mentioned it with football, but they don't have anything to show for it yet. NMU men's soccer definitely does. So that's going to do it for us here on the podcast. Thanks for joining us. For Keegan Cooper, I'm Kevin McNulty, and we will see you back here next week.